Frumess talks about Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Let's all talk about Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Cast a Deadly Spell from 1991. Here is the synopsis, directed by Martin Campbell. Bullets, demons, the end of the world. Can't hold a man like this. In a fantastical 1940s where magic is used by everyone, a hard-boiled detective investigates the theft of a mystical tomb. So, I mean, the thing that really is so special about Cast a Deadly Spell is that, like, there are so many films where, like, they want to use, like, this crazy premise, or they want to plug something into something else. And they spend, like, you know, a minute or 2 minutes or whatever, like a title credit sequence, just explaining, or they have characters like, you know, just shoving so much exposition down your throat, trying to explain what's going on. And Cast a Deadly Spell is just so brilliant in what it does. In the very beginning, the opening title sequence, you just see Los Angeles, 1948. Everybody uses magic. That's it. That's all you need to know. We don't know how people started using magic. We don't know why people started using magic. We just know that people use it. They use it like technology, and that's the world we're in. And once you read that, and then you can just jump into the world, and it's great. Roger Ward, Clancy Brown, David Warner, and Julianne Moore unleash all of their prowess in a hard-boiled neo-noir plot that tangles itself into far more knots than it needs to. So yeah, the plot was a little convoluted. Like, I don't know. I felt like it was a little bit more complicated than it had to be. And like, it could have kept things a little bit more simple. You know, something that doesn't require so much brain power, trying to keep track of who they're talking about and what's going on and this, that, and the other. But you have enough, like, sort of classic noir, you know, sort of happenings going on that you kind of get the gist, whether you're understanding what the plot is or not. What you really end up with, though, is Chinatown, right? Roman Polanski's Chinatown with Jack Nicholson. You end up with Chinatown, but set in the world of Harry Potter magic and H.P. Lovecraft horror. So you have the you know, Fred Ward plays a guy named Philip Lovecraft, and you also have Bradbury. And, you know, so there's a lot of Lovecraftian horror to go with this Harry Potter magic world. In 1948, in you know, Los Angeles. It's great. It's super creative. It blows my mind that this was an HBO made-for-TV movie at the height of Tales from the Crypt's power. So Tales from the Crypt, long before we had, you know, appointment Sunday serialized television, before Oz, before, I don't know, I'm trying to think of everything. Before Oz, before The Sopranos, before Game of Thrones, before Breaking Bad, before, you know, all this stuff, you had Tales from the Crypt on HBO. It was, you know, it ran for 7 seasons. It's hard to believe, including an 8th season that was sci-fi themed. It's hard to believe that HBO, that HBO even did something like Tales from the Crypt. And the fact that we got so many incredible, wonderful episodes, as well as 2 movies, like, it's just awesome. Technically more than 2. It blows my mind. Like, the fact, like, it's so weird because this movie would never get made today. And yet somehow in 1991, HBO was greenlighting this crazy movie. That's not to say what I'm going to say later in 2 seconds, but you'll see what I'm referring to in a second. Along with the brilliant Death Becomes Her by Tales executive producer Robert Zemeckis, this feels like it is a secret Tales from the Crypt movie that belongs right next to Demon Knight and Bordello of Blood. That's right. You Cast a Deadly Spell, as well as Death Becomes Her, are both very much Tales from the Crypt movies. Like, even though they're not officially, in the same way that Frighteners and From Dusk Till Dawn spun out, they were both supposed to be Tales from the Crypt movies, and they ended up spinning out into their own thing. They don't feel like Tales from the Crypt movies the way that Death Becomes Her and Cast a Deadly Spell do, both connected to tales, one via the network HBO and one via Robert Zemeckis. It all kind of makes sense. You also have David Warner as the bad guy, and he's just so, anything with David Warner in it. I mean, one of the greatest character actors from the 80s and 90s, and he's still around. God bless him, man. We live in a world that doesn't have David Warner. I mean, that doesn't have Fred Ward in it anymore, but it does have David Warner. And Clancy Brown, who just never, people don't like, people don't realize how great of an actor Clancy Brown is. He's in such a body of work, too. He's in Pet Sematary 2. He's in Starship Troopers. He's in so many great movies. He does the voice for Lex Luthor. He's great in this. He also plays one of the bad guys. The world building is superb, as I mentioned, established with a simple explanation. It's 1948 Los Angeles, and everyone uses magic as if it were some sort of new technology to be embraced. There's a great line in the first Thor movie that says something along the lines of Arthur C. Doyle's rule about writing in general. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that's what Natalie Portman, she has this line in the first Thor movie where she's like, she says something along those lines of like, your magic is science, or science is magic. And it's just sort of this notion. I mean, it's so true. Like everything that, somebody from the Middle Ages, if they came to us today, they would think everything is magic. Like all of this is magic. And yet we have a scientific understanding. It kind of helps me scale my belief in certain aspects of the supernatural. Like when you think about the idea of like, could there be a God out there? Like, absolutely. And like, if you want to explain, you could explain a God with science. I know that's a whole other discussion, but the point being is that beings with such advanced, incredible power would feel like gods. And very possibly in the same way that human beings are experimenting with life all the time in a variety of ways, that, the idea of like someone from a class 4 type civilization, that's a whole other discussion as well, that they could be gods, creating life forms like that of which we have on Earth, is entirely, possible. It's not, I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying it's possible. It's feasible. The point being is that here in Cast a Deadly Spell, it's almost the reverse of that notion where advanced technology, is magic. Sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. In this film, it's the reverse of that, in which magic is just simply magic, man. That's it. Like, but everybody uses it like technology. So in the same way that like, people embrace like, having a phone, and you have one stubborn guy that doesn't want a smartphone and he has a flip phone and he's not connected to the internet. And that's kind of like Fred Ward's character, Philip Lovecraft. He's a private eye and he just is against using magic, which is why he's hired by David Warner's character in the first place. David Warner wants him to retrieve a copy of the Necronomicon. So very seldom that we have that kind of that kind of Lovecraftian influence in movies. And man, you get so much stuff. And like I said, you got a guy named Bradbury, and there are a few other literary references peppered in. The Dunwich Room is based on the Dunwich Horror from H.P. Lovecraft. We also get stuff like blood rain. It just randomly, inexplicably rains blood. And you just sum it up to magic. It's never explained. It's just you to just imagine there's some magical reason why it rains blood. We also have crazy gargoyles that murder people, zombies that are exploited as a workforce, that you ship over from the West Indies, and they come in packages of 6 like bonbons, as said in the movie. You have this is a world that also has vampires and werewolves in it, as we see at the police precinct. There are rune hits where you write down like ancient runes and it summons demons to rip you to ribbons. There are even gremlins. And one of my favorites, most appealing to the eye, gorgeous matte paintings. So they really wanted to sort of transform 1948 LA into like this kind of mystical place. And they do a great job with all kinds of matte paintings. And we get interesting looking moons and sunsets and different colored skies. And that's all because of just matte paint work, which is just, you don't see it anymore because everything's digital now. But there's a real artistry to matte paintings. And this movie made in 1991 really takes advantage of that. It was like the dying age of the matte painting, because eventually everything turned into digital matte paintings, and digital matte paintings and matte paintings are just not the same. You could tell a matte painting is a matte painting, but it's also done in such a way where you're just sort of left in wonder of like the craft of like how they sort of extend a scene or, enhance a scene by painting these vistas or these things on glass and shrinking down via optical printing, shrinking down, like whatever, certain moving elements. You get so much good stuff. If Cast a Deadly Spell had come out 10 to 15 years later than it did, I really think it would have been a huge hit. Like on the heel right after the Harry Potter movies came out, it would have gotten its own franchise, man. Like it would have done very well in the world of like Constantine and Van Helsing, which is considered to be a flop, but really fucking fun. In fact, I think I'm going to watch it this week, Van Helsing. So we'll talk more about it. The problem was it was just a little too early to the party, man. But perhaps maybe that's also what makes it so special. I really think that Arrow Video needs to do a special deluxe release of this one. It's so worthy of it, and it needs to happen. So watch it now on HBO Max. It also has a sequel starring Dennis Hopper called Witch Hunt. That was written by Paul Schrader. I have not seen it yet. Maybe I'll watch that this week as well. So 2 movies to potentially scope out: Witch Hunt and whatchamacallit, Van Helsing. Those 2. Definitely check out Cast a Deadly Spell if you can. And I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It really just deserves 5 stars. I should change that rating. So I'm probably going to.